Welcome, everybody, to Campaigns and Concoctions, where we are a bunch of demented discoursers who like to drink and play TTRPGs.
Damn right.
Yeah, welcome back into our intro series. This is episode 4. Super excited. Today we have John. John, who is our resident cocktail connoisseur, who makes some of the best stuff. So, John, I'm going to actually ask you something that I haven't asked anybody else, but I think it's a little bit more relevant here. Tell us how you got into the cocktail scene.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I started drinking when I was 10. All right. The first time I had a drink, I was 10 years old. I was at a buddy's house. It was actually funny. My mom would drop me off at these kids' house to walk with them to school because they lived closer to school, and she felt that because the kid that was my age had an older brother that was like 2 years older than us, that clearly he was more responsible and would make sure we all got to school on time. And instead what we did was raid their dad's liquor cabinet for a year straight until he caught us, because we had replaced all of the booze with either water or iced tea, depending on whether it was a clear liquor or a brown liquor.
Yeah.
That's where I got started. But I've always been kind of a whiskey drinker, almost exclusively. I used to drink a lot of beer, but kind of, it started doing weird stuff to my guts. I don't know what the deal is there. But always been a whiskey drinker, always loved it. Always would default to vodka if they didn't have a whiskey I like. Right, but didn't really dabble much further than that. And then there was a while there where I was doing all of these charity events, and they would have these silent auctions. And the silent auction would be like, do you want to go skiing with a politician? Or do you want this obscure piece of art from a local artist that doesn't actually look like anything? Or do you want this basket with 2 martini glasses, a bottle of vermouth, a jar of olives, and a bottle of gin? And I'm like, well, I don't drink gin, but I'll drink the gin before I go skiing. So, I might as well bid on the gin. And so I ended up with a bunch of gin, a bunch of wine, actually. Ended up bidding on a bunch of wines. And this is over years, and it never touched it. And then COVID hit, and I was stuck in my house for months, not really going out anywhere, definitely not going out to drink at bars or anything like that. And so I ended up going through... I hadn't had a chance to stock up on whiskey before I don't like to call them lockdowns because we didn't really have lockdowns, but the strong suggestion to stay inside was issued, which some of us followed, and so I ended up running out of whiskey, and I tweeted out at a friend of mine who I knew as a bartender, what the fuck do you do with gin? Right? Now, I had bought so many of these baskets that I had like 4 different kinds of gin. I had, I had dry vermouth. I had Dolan Vermouth Rouge. I also had maraschino liqueur, and I had creme de violet, because various of these kits had come with these different liqueurs, And so she was like, what do you have on hand? And I tell her, I've got gin, I've got, lemons. She says, do you have any simple syrup? I said, I don't know, but how do you make simple syrup? And she was like, just make it. And I was like, how do you make it? I don't know how to make it. And she's like, John, it's literally equal parts water and sugar. Put it on a stove, boil it, stir it. You've got simple syrup. And I was like, oh my God. So the very first cocktail that I actually made, besides like an old fashioned, was actually an aviation. I made it in my living room during COVID. And at the time I was doing sort of like... advertising type of deal, political advertising, basically. Quit doing that when we came back from kind of COVID and decided to switch things up and became a bartender professionally for about 3.5 years. And loved it. Still love it. I'm making more money doing this other thing that I'm doing now, but eventually what I'm going to do is I'm going to save up money to start a distillery and open a new bar. So
perfect.
I'm never going to be away from making cocktails and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The rest of my life,
So speaking of that, what are you drinking?
Yeah. So this drink has many names, but I think the one that I like the most is Bushi no Desato. So this is a cocktail I made up for some guys at Hey Kiddo when I was working there. It's basically a Manhattan build, but it's a dessert drink. So Bushi no Desato is Japanese for the fighter's dessert or the soldier's dessert, right? So it's 2 ounces of Nika single malt coffee whiskey. That's Coffey, not coffee like the bean, but coffee like the man who invented the still. And then half an ounce of Amaro no Nino, half an ounce of Tempest Fugit creme de cacao, and a couple dashes of mole bitters, stirred. And I put it on one of my marble whiskey stones that Hannah bought for me because it won't dilute anymore, but it'll stay cold.
Yep.
And then garnished with a couple of maraschino cherries on there as well. It's fucking delicious.
And unlike any other time you see me, I am just drinking 805 Cerveza.
805. I haven't had the Cerveza.
It is so good. It is one of the best Mexican lagers I've had.
Hell
and then I throw in a little lime beer salt and
hell yeah.
Perfection, dude.
Awesome.
Especially
I love 805 standard, whatever their black can is. That shit's delicious. I would imagine their Cerveza is also amazing. So
yeah. When I picked it up the other day, so cheers.
Yep. Cheers.
When I picked it up the other day at the liquor store, the guy was like, "Man, I've always heard this is good stuff." He's like, "Yeah, I drink a lot of Modelo." I'm like, "This is better, dude. This is just better."
I'm sure. I believe it hands down. That's very easy for me to believe. Yeah.
All right. So let's roll into this then.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us how you got into TTRPGs?
Yeah. So I had met Nate and Dustin and Jared at church, actually, along with another guy that had played with us for a very brief. Oh, and Curtis, actually. Curtis as well, I met through church. Back when I used to go to church, which was a long time ago now.
Long time ago. For both of us, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I met those guys at church and was very involved with the church for a long time, and then but very heavily fell out of it and became essentially a full-blown atheist, which I would call myself today. And kind of fell out of contact with them, but Dustin and another friend of ours were living in the same apartment complex. Ended up running into them, and they were like, "Hey, why don't you come over and play D&D with us? We're going to try it out. You know, some of us have played, some of us haven't. So why don't you come hang out?" And it had been about 2 years since I had hung out with any of those guys. Well, Dustin, I had hung out with Dustin a little bit. We did a lot of like leatherwork and blacksmithing together, and building random shit out of machine parts, because we both have a little bit of gnome and a little bit of goblin in us, you know. Yeah, but I hadn't hung out with Nate in at least 2 years, and that was after he and I had lived together, you know. So I ended up going over and hanging out and had such a fucking blast playing D&D for the very first time when I was 30, I want to say. Pretty sure I was about 30. And it was fucking amazing. And I've been playing with those guys ever since. So it was I want to say it was 2015. So I was like, just before I turned 31 is the first time that I legitimately played. Tried to play once in middle school with a friend of mine. He made it extremely unenjoyable. And so I never played it again after that. But I knew that it was him who was the problem. He didn't want to do it. And it was just the two of us. And so he was like, you know, made a very quick, here's how this halfling kills you sort of, 3-minute journey, and was like, that's what D&D is like. And I was like, I think it's probably not, but okay.
Yeah. So also fun fact, everyone. So when I wanted to get into TTRPGs, I put out a call on Facebook, and John was the guy who answered. And he was like, "Hey man, meet my friend Nate, who is a DM." And then that's how I rolled into this group. And John and I have known each other. God, what has it been? 14 years now at this point?
Because it was like beginning of 2009, because it was my very first semester in college.
Yeah.
It started January of 2009.
Yeah.
So 14, almost 15. It's 14 and a half at least years.
Yeah, we were, shout out Kim Klemek, by the way. We met in a class, both kind of cherry red after reading a translation of a poem.
Yeah.
about skull fucking.
Yep. Still fucking.
Yeah, we weren't ready for that. So yeah, so John is the John
and not
is
the fun kind, like through the eye socket.
yeah. It was rough.
Going through the eye socket. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
it was rough.
pretty intense. Yeah.
So yeah, that there you go. Like it's interesting as we work through this. Everyone's so interconnected here, like, and it's funny how when you compare who's known, like everything's so weird. It's like, but it's fun to see the interconnections.
There's
right?
no way to really know who's known. I mean, like technically, you and Dustin have known each other the longest.
Yeah.
I think after that, probably Curtis and Matt have known each other the second longest,
and then probably you and me,
and then probably me and you, and then probably after that, me and Nate.
Maybe Nate and Dustin
before I met any of the other guys, and then Dustin, Jared, probably around the same time, and then Curtis right around the same time as well, and then Curtis is the one that introduced me to Matt. That was back in 2016. It was either the end of 2016 or beginning of 2017. I can't remember which.
And it's been a hell of a ride. I mean, we as a full table, I think including Jared, have been playing together for like 6 years.
Yeah, I was going to say 5 or 6 years probably.
And then the table, I think, has been together for 8-ish, maybe 9.
The table as a whole, like the original table, which did not include you, Jared, or Matt, we've all been playing together since 2015.
Yeah, so 9 years.
Yeah,
9 years.
That's a long time.
And dear listener, one thing that you will always notice: a table that actually stays together for a long time is never the same. There's 2 or 3 people who are usually consistent. Like the fact that we have 6 years together with the same 7 people,
insane.
Is shocking. Like, I mean, that was one of because John is actually the reason that we actually have the podcast. He was like, "Hey guys, we suck at staying on target.
You're so bad at it.
So can we let's do this?" Like I think I had my own podcast at that point, and I was like, "Yeah, I know how to do it. Let's fucking do it." Right. And the fact that we are still like 2.5 years later, still doing the thing, and obviously better than we were 2.5 years ago. So it's really awesome. Like that's the whole thing is like, we decided that we didn't want to we were playing homage to Dimension 20 Critical Role because there are the reasons that we kind of do this thing.
Absolutely.
But like, we can't be that. Like we're not voice actors. We're not professionals. We are a very good home game. Like, I mean, that was the thing we wanted to show you. Like, we have pretty high production values now, but like the game is still the same. Right? It doesn't matter if it's episode 51, episode 1, or the 4 years before that.
Right.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
So that was one of the cool things. So,
and like the other thing is like, I think one of the things that makes our table so good is, yes, none of us are improv comedians or actors or voice actors or any of that, but we all throw ourselves fully into whatever we're doing. Mm-hmm. And we both take the serious moments seriously, and we take the goofy moments with a good sense of humor, and we try to mix the two together what I think is usually a pretty good mix. Sometimes we get a little goofy, you know, but I think we do a pretty good job of being like, I am here for whatever is happening right now.
Yep.
And that's what we're going to do. And, you know, just throwing ourselves completely into it. And, you know, we've had accents at the table at multiple times. You know, we play all kinds of different characters. We get out of our comfort zone. And we get out of our comfort zone with our RP and like, what is it that we're actually doing? Mm-hmm. You know, essentially chatting with our friends over shiny rocks with numbers on them while we drink, you know?
Yep. I think that's a really good point. So about our characters, what was your inspiration for Skjald? Like you do always have, even your stupid joke characters always have some sort of deep meaning behind them, even if it's just the joke, right? So what was it what was the main inspiration for bringing Skjald to life?
So Skjald was kind of like, I was at a stage in life where I was going through some transitions, going from trying to be this more polished individual that I really am not, to allowing myself to be a little bit more myself again in real life. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I'm like somewhere between, like in reality, I'm somewhere between a Viking, a Roma, a Mongol, a pirate, and a magpie. You know, like really at the end of the day, and maybe some like Fianna Fáil Irishman. You know, like I fall somewhere between these things. I have deeply meaningful tattoos and absolute joke tattoos. I like shiny objects. I like to wear jewelry and weird clothes, and I like to have a weird haircut because it feels good to me.
Thanks for saying weird clothes as you're wearing my shirt.
Yeah. One of the least weird pieces of clothing I own, honestly. But there's Carl, come here. Hey, come here. Come say hi to everybody. Come on, right here.
The bestest boy. Here we go.
There he is.
It's Carl.
Hi. Hi. It's not Mom. She's not coming home till late. Don't worry. He thought that his mom was coming home. But so the inspiration behind Skeld was like kind of trying to amalgamate all of those pieces of myself back together, through RP, because D&D has always been a little bit therapy for me, and then like there is a joke in Skeld as well, right? So he's part Viking, he's part Jack Sparrow, he's part Dread Pirate Roberts, he's part kind of jester, He is a little bit of a jokester, right? Like, he takes his own infamy the least seriously of anyone around him. Like, he knows that he's slaughtered entire islands worth of cannibals and stuff like that, right? But he's like, whatever, it wasn't a big deal. Unless you want to make a big deal of it, then I can make a big deal of it if you want, Like, that's kind of his attitude. And then his backstory was entirely built as a joke. I took a bunch of sea shanties, took the lyrics and pieced them together into a backstory. So he's literally just like 7 sea shanties literally in a trench coat.
Yet at the same time, he's having some of the most deep interactions with the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, so like part of it is like, there's some things in those sea shanties that I identify with pretty well, but it is still like, it's somewhere between a joke and like therapy and a really what I thought would be interesting character to explore that is exploring elements of my own personality and development, because I always play some aspect of myself. Even my joke characters are based heavily in my own sense of humor and kind of how I can sometimes be a little bit of a caricature of myself, Also, in addition to a somewhat custom warlock subclass that we built. Oh yeah, that was we built a really cool subclass here. Yeah, it might be just a hair overpowered in certain circumstances, but whatever, who cares? I mean, I'm throwing some serious shit at you guys anyways, and you guys, I mean, you guys are all good D&D players, so that's always the hardest part, so yeah. Awesome. So on this last one, this is kind of a two-pronged thing for me, right? I told Nate this the other day. Like, this is also this is going to help inform the future of the campaign, but it's also like, what is it? I really think people would want to know. What do you hope to see during the rest of campaign 1? I want to see Patrice have some kind of internal reconciliation with this concept of the god that he's following, right? I think that would be really cool for him to just at least get maybe not full closure, but some kind of reconciliation of the disparate parts of his experience with his god and with the world at large. I would like to find out what the fuck is going on with Sark. That would be huge. Yeah. Because, like, Jesus, that dude's backstory is insane just from what, I only know what Skeld knows. So, and I try to keep it that way in all of my games. I don't want to know anything beyond what my character would know as much as possible. Honestly, there's a good chunk of Sark's backstory that Nate doesn't know. That doesn't surprise me at all. It was really fun. He said, I go for it. So he's learning as you guys are. Right? Yeah, I love that. Skeld got one of his big kind of 3. There's like 3 people in particular that he really wants to cross off his list. He got one of them. If he got another one, that would be cool. I don't expect him to, and I don't know that it really even makes a good story if he does. But I want to play through kind of the aftermath of him getting to kill one of his marks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who made a huge negative impact on his life. And what a lot of people, I don't think, realize is I actually do improv a lot of what's happening. So, like, in my inventory, I had these 3 daggers the whole time, right? In the moment, I was like, ooh, one of these daggers belonged to her, and it's the one she left in my back. Yeah. That was an on-the-spot decision, because I was like, that would be fucking cool, and I'll give it back to her, right? So, like, a lot of it is kind of in the moment for me, and definitely, like, I have actively avoided thinking about how Skeld is going to react to this, because what we're going to do is we're going to sit down at the table, and you're going to say, okay, this is what just happened, and I'm going to get my head there, and then I'm going to react to that, however it is that I react to that in that moment. So I'm excited to see what that looks like, and kind of how it alters Skeld's personality, maybe, or his perception of things, if it even does, because it may not deter him in any way, shape, or form.
Well, you know what's interesting?
Determined person.
When you talk about the way that you improv and everything, I told in our very first episode of the intro series, Matt and I were talking about how you role play the way Skeld does magic.
Oh yeah,
right?
For sure.
You say I'm not a role player. I'm not a role player, but then you do all this deep role play with intentionality. Right. So it's really interesting. I think it's funny because it's like, and that's, I think, going back all the way, call back to that very first question about TTRPGs and inspiration and all that stuff. That's what makes our table so unique, right? Yeah. Like, I throw Curtis a loop because he wants to have a whole plan, and he's got these goals of these things that he wants to hit mechanically for his character, and then I throw caltrops in his way, and then Nate is always super happy with being a kind of an assistant DM. Matt's my storytelling assistant DM. I never know what the fuck Dustin's gonna do, and then Jared's just there to just embrace emotion, right? Like his impact with Seal. And I think it's interesting too. So far, you're the only one who's brought up any other character stories when I asked them this question.
Oh, interesting. So really?
Super interesting. Well, they have big things and like kind of like big game things, but it was never stuff about the other characters or anything. So I find that really interesting, and it shows like how everyone thinks about the game, which is different, and it's awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll be honest. I don't even know what we've been doing, because I don't think Skeld knows what we've been doing. All I know is that we work for what's her name? Starts with a P, right?
Yeah. Prosperin.
I know we work for Prosperin. I know we've done a couple jobs for the manager. I don't know what our overall goal is. I think it has something to do with gates. Like, we were looking into these gates, and I think that's exactly where Skeld's head is at as well. He's like, yeah, we're doing some shit for Prosperin and the manager when it's convenient, and so we can have this cool ship and fly around and do the shit we want to do, which is mostly just adventuring. And if I get to kill a couple people I've been wanting to kill for a decade or two, tally ho, let's get after it.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, thanks, dude, for setting apart some time for this. This has been one of my favorite things that we've done so far. This has been our longest break, and I think this it's really cool because it's like we never introduced ourselves really deeply introduced ourselves to our audience, and I think that like it's a really cool chance. So it was really awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time. And as always, if you want to get in touch with us in a more interactive way, you can click the links below. Point. And until next time, y'all. Drink well.
Drink well.